Okay, so I started my intensive courses, which had like a whole 40-minute segment about the pre-Socratic philosophers, um, and I just want to do like a small video for each for like 6 of the pre-Socratic philosophers. Um, you want to do like one video for each. So the book I'm using for that is The Great Conversation, and I think it's a great resource to read about the Presocratics. I think it's really good for that, especially if you want to read about like Homer and Hesiod. They were kind of like, they weren't philosophers, but they like were precursors of philosophy itself. And so in this one, I want to talk about Thales. Thales was like the first philosopher. He's the first person who ever philosophized about anything. He was from Miletus. He was what we call like the first. Of course, he was the first philosopher. He was also the first naturalist. He was basically the founder of philosophy, and he had a metaphysics which was based upon water, and water is the first necessary cause for everything. The cause and element of everything is water. That's what it all is. And as we have this little necessary contingent distinction, water is necessary, and that means that water doesn't have anything that comes before it. It's the cause of everything, and it's the way that things are maintained as they are, according to Thales. And people are still looking at the little scraps of whatever we have of these pre-Socratics, and also what we have in Plato's dialogues, and we're kind of trying to interpret that more further and think more about what he was thinking, and kind of extrapolate this a little bit more if we can. So, and he's had this idea that also that all things are filled with gods. And this is kind of like a animism. Animism is kind of like the shamanistic idea that everything in the world has gods in it, and that there's spirits and everything, and that's kind of like a tribal shamanistic sort of way of looking at things that lots of tribal religions have had. So he does kind of have that idea. However, his is not really shamanistic. It's it definitely is different from that, but it's more of a philosophical way of looking at things, a more philosophical animism, if you will. Water occurs naturally, and he has sort of and what first of all, what is naturalism? Naturalism is the idea that we look at things as to what is natural. We understand things based upon what is natural to the world, and we do science. Well, scientific naturalism is that we do science based upon what is natural to this world, and he says that water occurs naturally. So we are going to think about things in terms of water, because water is natural, and he accounts for things you can see and touch, and in terms of what you can see and touch. So therefore, he doesn't want to be transcendental in really any way. He doesn't want to go beyond what we have. He's kind of also kind of a empiricist too. Like, he was a naturalist and sort of a empiricist also. He says that water is necessary, but not contingent. He of course did not use those words, but those are words that today in philosophy, those are the 2 words that we really know very well. Water is necessary, and it's basically is immortal. It's the first cause, almost like the unmoved mover, kind of like the gods, pretty much. And he says that the world is of one substance. Everything is of one thing. Thus, he was a monist. And a monist about substance metaphysics is that everything's made out of one thing. And again, he was about this non-transcendental look at everything. So that's kind of a brief overview of what Thales was about. I mean, I guess if you could really talk a lot more about this, looking at the scraps of what we have of Thales, and trying to extrapolate this and interpret more of it. But that's kind of the whole basics of it. So, and then the next one we'll be talking about Anaximander.